Well, welcome everyone. Yesterday we uh, said our final goodbyes for James and expressed so many people expressed their love for him and shared experiences that we all had with James. It was just a wonderful uh, get together, and I feel I really very privileged to have been able to officiate over that and just see all the reactions of people. I also wanted to give a big thank you to everyone that participated, uh, especially to the ladies who made the delicious food for everyone to share, and for the men who, at the last, were going around trying to find places for people to sit and bring out chairs and all that. It was really great. I don't think I've seen this building that full. So it was a great tribute to James. And uh, this time we're going to change our thoughts to Jesus. In Hebrews chapter 12, we're encouraged to consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. Some of the things that were written about Jesus, some of the historical accounts, one of the things that we're going to look at today, not only tells us something about Jesus' teaching, but it also gives us an example of how he endured ill treatment. And that is written to give us encouragement so that we don't, if Jesus didn't get discouraged, then we certainly have no right to be discouraged. Can you imagine spending your entire life and your career trying to convince people only to have them just spit in your face and kill you? That's got to be as discouraging as you can possibly get, but he never got discouraged. We're going to see two more examples of being treated like this. In this first one, the Pharisees take another shot at Jesus. They've been trying to get at him, but for all different kind of reasons. And now in Matthew chapter 22, he's going to uh, have another run-in with the Pharisees. Remember, each day now, he's in the last week of his life, and each day he would go from Bethany back into Jerusalem, spend the time in the temple area, and the Pharisees got a chance to take a shot at him. And so in Matthew 22:15, then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. So we got to figure out a way to get this guy. We got to get him to say something that will incriminate himself so that we can get him. They had nothing that they could accuse him of unless he said something. The only way that they were thinking they would get him was by getting him to blaspheme. And so they were trying to figure out how to get him in trouble some way or some other. This time they try not to get him to blaspheme, but they get him to try to say something that's going to get him in trouble with the government. It says in verse 16, and they sent to him their disciples, that is, the disciples of the Pharisees. A disciple just means a learner, somebody that's under the tutelage, I guess you would say, of someone else. And so the Pharisees were teaching young ones coming up to be just exactly like they were, and creating more sons of, as Jesus said, more sons of hell than forget the rest of what he said, but they were just making little puppets coming along behind them. They sent these guys with the Herodians. Now, notice it says the Herodians. Raise your hands if you can tell me who the Herodians were. Okay. Um, Several people, but there's several people that didn't raise your hand, so I'm going to explain for you people. Um, the Herodians were a, a I don't know, for lack of a better term, a sect of the Jews who the Jews were real divided by this time, and some of them were pro Herod family rule. The Herod family had been ruling since even before Jesus was ever born. Herod the Great was the first in the line of this dynasty, and he had ruled for a long time. And then when he was about to die, he divided the whole land of Israel between his children, Herod Antipas, Herod Archelaus, Herod Aristobulus, and all these different Herods, but they were all in the same family. And there's a bunch of people who liked it that way. I mean, Herod the Great, as bad as he was, especially to his own family, and tried to kill Jesus when he was first born. As bad as he was, he did some really great stuff. He rebuilt the temple into one of the most beautiful, magnificent buildings in the entire world. It may have been the biggest and most beautiful of any of the buildings that were in the world at that time. And it doesn't get the credit from the world that it really deserves. But anyway, he built that. He built the Herodium, which is a palace on top of a hillside to the northeast of Jerusalem. Magnificent palace, with running water and all kinds of stuff. He built Masada, which was a fortress up on top of a mountain to the southeast of Jerusalem. He built Caesarea. He made an actual port that ships could come in. There was no good port along the coast of Israel until Caesarea Maritima was built by Herod the Great. So he did wonderful things for that country, but he also called the name of that city Caesarea. Where do you think that name Caesarea comes from? Caesar. And so he was paying tribute, even though he was a Hasmonean, which was kind of related to the children of Israel. He was a Roman king. He was made king by the Romans, and he had his allegiance to the Roman people, or to the Roman government. And these Herodians thought that was a good way to keep peace in their country, and they were pro Herod, who was pro Roman. They, as it says in this next line, they favored the Roman governance. They were fine with the Romans taking care of business. The Romans protected them, and they had to pay high taxes, which most of the people did not like the high taxes, but it was better than having to worry about all the getting attacked from Egypt or, anywhere. So they favored that. And these people, these Herodians, would be keen to report any anti-Roman sentiments that somebody started mouthing off. So if the Pharisees could get Jesus to say something against the Romans, then, or the Roman taxation or whatever, they knew that these Herodians would go trotting off to the Roman authorities and say, hey, this guy's a troublemaker. He's trying to say, well, whatever, So that's why they sent the Herodians there. And the sentence is only half done. The rest of the sentence goes like this: that they might seize on his words in order to deliver him to the power and authority of the governor. They're trying to get him in trouble with the governor. All of the rulers were Romans. The Romans were occupying Israel at this time, and so they're trying to get him in trouble with the Romans. That's what they're doing. And he would go before the governor as he sat on his judgment seat and have to stand trial for whatever, bad-mouthing the taxes or causing a revolt or whatever else they could get him at. We all are kind of familiar with the people being accused of trying to cause a revolt and things like that. And that's exactly what happened with Jesus. I mean, history does, and I'm not comparing anyone alive today with Jesus, but history does repeat itself in principle. Anyway, Jesus obviously didn't want to have to go before the Romans, but these people thought they could get at him this way. They hadn't had any luck any other way. So they asked him, saying, Teacher, we know you say and teach rightly. You do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. If you want to get somebody's attention, you give them some compliments. Yeah, you are one really great guy. Really great guy. Answer me this question or whatever. So they come and say, we know you teach rightly. Now, whether that was tongue in cheek or whether they really believed it, I don't know. But remember from chapter 4 of the Gospel of John with Nicodemus, he came to Jesus by night and says, we know, Rabbi, we know that you must be from God because you couldn't do these miracles that you're doing except God was with you. So it may be that they believed it, that they just didn't care. He was saying stuff they didn't like. Whatever the reason was, they paid him this compliment before asking him this question, trying to trick him, trying to bait him. Verse 22 of Luke 20, they said, is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? We got Caesar occupying our country. Is it lawful, according to God's law, to pay taxes to Caesar? There were many people that didn't think they should be doing that. The Herodians were not some of those people, but the other ones, the Pharisees' disciples, were asking this question. The Herodians were listening for their reaction. But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, why do you test me? I know what you're doing, guys. Why are you testing me like this? You think I'm stupid? I don't know what you're doing? He says, show me a denarius. Denarius was a coin that was a day's wage. So whatever a day's wage is, that's what a denarius is worth. In our day and time, I don't even want to guess what a day's wage is worth right now, but it's not $3 or $4. It's a lot of money. To me, it is at least. And so he says, show me a denarius. Well, this is what a denarius looked like. One side, you had the head of, guess who? The emperor, Caesar. On the back, you can even see at the top there, you can see the name in Latin, Caesar. And at the bottom, all the V's in Latin are U's. So you can't see the A part very well, but you can see the rest, Augustus. Anyway, this is a coin that was stamped during the reign of Caesar Augustus. That's what their Roman coins look like. So he had said to them, show me one of these, show me a denarius, a Roman coin. And he said, whose image and inscription does it have? Well, I'm going to show you some American coins and let you tell me if you know who these people are. I don't think anybody would have trouble knowing that a penny has Abraham Lincoln's picture on it. How about a quarter? Anybody know who that is? 200 years ago he lived, but we know that's George Washington. What about this one? We recognize John Kennedy, especially if you don't know who it is, you just look at the date and then you can figure out who it is. 1964 was the year that he was assassinated, or was it late in 63? Yeah, I believe it was late 63. But anyway, so the first coin printed after that was with John Kennedy's face on it. So we see a coin, we know whose image it is. They knew whose image it was. They answered and said, Caesar's. That's whose image is on there. And not only his image, but also his inscription, Caesar. So the face and the inscription was Caesar's. He said to them, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And so this is out of the mouth of Jesus. There's a difference. You have the spiritual side of things, and you also have the secular side of things. We're under the Roman government. Give them what is their due. And he said that. And the next thing it says is, but they could not catch him in his words in the presence of the people. Who's going to argue with that? They couldn't catch him with his words, and they marveled at his answer and kept silent. They did not expect him to say that. Remember, they were thinking about the Messiah. He was the guy that was going to come and deliver the people from the Romans. That's who they thought what the Messiah was going to do. And so he's not going to say, well, give to the Romans what's their due. He's going to say, you guys got to stand up to these people, and whatever this rebel would say that they thought the Messiah was going to be. And so they marveled, and they kept silent. They couldn't say a thing. Their mouths were zip shut. They could not say one thing. And so they left. So now, the Sadducees give it a try. This is the second thing that happened. The Sadducees give it a try. Now, the difference between Pharisees and Sadducees, there were a lot of differences, but the main one, and the one that's going to show up here, is the Sadducees didn't believe in a resurrection. They believed that when you died, you're like Rover. When Rover dies, he's dead all over. Well, that's kind of what they believed. There was no resurrection as far as they were concerned. And so when Jesus said that, destroy this temple in 3 days, and 3 days, or destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll raise it up, they would, if he's talking about a resurrection, forget about it. He can't be the Messiah, because they didn't believe that. And they didn't believe in angels either. They didn't think angels existed. So that was the two things that are going to show up in this story. They're going to try and trip him up after they saw that the Pharisees weren't successful. So that same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him, saying, Teacher, Moses said that if a man dies having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up offspring to his brother. So they're formulating a question, but first they're just making a statement. Moses said something back in the law. Now I'm going to read what Moses said so that we can have it firmly in our minds. Moses said, if brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not be married to a stranger outside the family. Her husband's brother shall go into her, take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears will succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. So this was the law. This was the law that was established under the old covenant so that a person's name wouldn't die with him if he didn't have any children. So that's the basis of what the question they're going to ask. He says, these Sadducees said, now there were with us 7 brothers. The first died, and after he had married, or he died after he had married, and having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. Likewise, the second also, and the third, and even to the 7th. So all of these brothers, the first one married a woman, and he died before they had any children. So the first brother took her, and he died before they had any children, all on the way down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman died also. So now they've all died, and you got 7 brothers that were married to her. None of them had any children. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife of the 7 will she be? They got these big smiles on their faces. They've got him now, don't they? So in the resurrection, who's she going to be married to then? She's already been married to all 7 of the brothers. So Jesus answered and said to them, "You are mistaken, not knowing the scriptures nor the power of God. For the resurrection, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven." Well, in this statement of Jesus, there was 3 digs against the Sadducees. 3 digs. And the first one was, "You don't know the scriptures." Now that's a huge insult to any of these Jewish leaders, because they prided themselves on reading the scriptures every Sabbath and talking about them and learning them. And he says, "You don't know them." And I put this picture, it's of Exodus chapter 3 with a picture superimposed over it of the burning bush. And here's why. Well, I'll tell you that in a minute, I guess I should say. The second thing that he dug him with, he said, "You don't know the power of God." He's talking about the resurrection, of course. You do not know how much power God has. You don't recognize it. And the third thing that he digs them with is that there are angels in heaven. Now, that picture had wings and all that, which the Bible doesn't tell us if they had wings, but you get the picture. There are angels in heaven. And that was a dig to the Sadducees because they didn't believe in angels. And so he got them 3 different ways. But then he answers, he says, "But concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob?" God's not the God of the dead, but of the living. Now, when he was speaking to Moses, 1500, 1500 AD, Abraham was long past. He was near 2000 BC, and he was long past, and so was Isaac, so was Jacob. Moses came along, 400 or 500 years later. So they were long gone from this earth. But God said, "I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob." And Jesus says, God is not a God of the dead, but of the living. What does that imply? That implies that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all living. And if they all died and are now living, what happened? There was a resurrection. And so he's teaching these guys, you don't know the scriptures and you don't know the power of God. God can and did raise people from the dead. And the example that he's giving here, where he quotes God saying, "I am the God of Abraham," was from Exodus chapter 3 at the Moses at the burning bush, where Moses was told, "Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground." And God told him, "I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm telling you, go, let my people go." But anyway, Jesus just took one passage that wasn't even talking about that, but he went to it to show. He wasn't talking about the resurrection there. He was just talking about who he was. "I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here's what I want you to do." Jesus goes back and takes an inference from that. The inference is, if he says, "I am," and these guys had died hundreds of years before, the inference there is there must be a resurrection. And so this passage will, for those of you that are in the Sunday morning Bible class, this passage will mean something to you when we start talking about other matters of how to know that God is pleased with you. So anyway, he shuts them down. So it doesn't say what their reaction was, but it says, when the multitudes heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. Nobody ever spoke like this. This guy is something else. They were just amazed. And that's where the story ends. But for this lesson, I just want to ask you a couple questions. Are you astonished at his teaching? Does your mouth drop open when you read, oh, I can't believe Jesus could do that. I can't. Where did he get that wisdom? How did he know? How did he think on his feet so much? If you're not astonished at his teaching, you need to look again and look deeper. Not just skip across and skim across the words, but look deeply in. What did it take for him to answer that on a split second after they asked that question? You know, how did he know just what to say? And so many things that you can, as you look deeper into it, you can find the things that will just make you marvel at Jesus and just make you appreciate him so much more. But if you are astonished at his teaching, what now? Are you going to let that motivate you to think, man, this guy is something else. He's so good. I really ought to tell my neighbors about this. I ought to talk to somebody. I want to tell my children how awesome Jesus was and explain to them these things that are finally penetrating the thick skull of mine. And man, I just appreciate this guy so much. What's next? Well, the last question is it well with your soul? This guy that was so awesome has wanted you to be his brother. He died for your sins, and he wants you to be with him and to be in relationship with his Father, just like he was in relationship with his Father. He made it possible, taking all the sins of the world upon himself so that we could have a chance to be washed in that blood that Jesus shed for us, to cleanse us entirely of all unrighteousness. If you're here and for some reason, whatever, your soul is not okay with God, I mean, you don't feel that close connection with God that you want to feel, then you need to do something about it. If you haven't been obedient to the gospel, that's the first thing. But if you have been obedient to the gospel and are just not feeling the connection, not feeling that amazed at when you read what Jesus said, then we need to talk. You need to talk to somebody. You need to dig into the word some more. Whatever you need to do, that's what I'm encouraging you to do now. And we're going to sing. I know you know what song it is we're going to sing. As we sing it, I just want you to think about it and place yourself here. You know the story of this song probably, but just think, I want to be like this. I want to be well with God. If you are well with God, then you can appreciate the song as well. So as we stand and sing,